Good afternoon, my name's Ian Parkin. I'm a Sunderland lad, born and bred. I was born over Hendon, the East End, and I came to sea when I was 16 years old. I've now been to sea for nearly 4 decades. I'm currently the Royal Fleet Auxiliary Convener and look after round about 600 members with the RMT. Being part of Sunderland, this today makes me immensely proud that we are remembering the people who died for what they believe in. The people who were devoted to trade unionism at the time and asking for more things, more money, so they could look after the family and they would give their life to something that was beneficial to them. 200 years later, we remember them today on the 3rd of August.
In 1825, lives were on the line, and temperatures were rising on the riverside. Wages were low, and fear began to grow. The shipyard owners feared they'd lose control. Negotiations ran, incensed by fair demands. Davidson, magistrate, in anger played his hand. The dragoons relayed the deal to make the workers kneel. Those brave enough to stand faced bitter steel. On North Sands, August 3rd, workers fought to have their voices heard. The desperate cries of working men and women on the weir, discovered from the depths for us to hear. The workers made their stand with banners linked in hands. Stones were cast, the muskets flashed, then blood covered the sand. Smoke drifted away, the bosses had their say. Ed Wallace, Dove and Moore lay dead that day. So 200 years pass by, yet their sacrifice abides. So at the river's edge we honor those that gave their lives.
I think one of the key parts of this is just how little is known. How little is known about the victims, how little is known about the event itself. In fact, until very, very recently, this event was almost completely obscured from history. There was very little reference in terms of any academic papers or any history books, and in public memory it was entirely lost. So the people and the characters that actually were looking into the 7 people who died were having to base this knowledge that we have of them on all sorts of very, very limited fragments that we can find in the parish records, that we can find in other kind of accounts. But at the moment we know virtually nothing about the people themselves. We know a little bit about their ages, we know a little bit about the professions. This was part of the 1825 seaman strike, and that had basically been generated by a number of different factors, including low wages, but also to do with the fact that people were very concerned about the health and safety issues regarding the unloading of ballast just before people got into port. In fact, it was dangerous, and it was also unfair because it actually meant that people weren't actually kind of getting paid for work that they were doing. So there's this kind of ongoing kind of long-term kind of issue about people requiring to be paid for what had actually been done. The strike kind of rose up for a number of different reasons. There'd been some antagonism between some of the local ship owners and the union. Almost immediately, the local ship owners started to form their own set of alliances and start to squeeze out the union, trying to make the union less effective than what it would have been otherwise. And that led to some kind of antagonism. There'd also been a legal case where John Davison, who was to have an incredibly significant part in the story, is the magistrate who was the person who facilitated the shooting on North Sands Beach. The fact that he'd had been in a dispute with the kind of the local seamen and had actually lost his legal fees of over £200, or equivalent to about £24,000 in today's money. And then you have this ongoing kind of struggle for people to get their rights. People were kind of in incredibly difficult kind of living conditions, certainly when they're at work, but also when they're at home. They were easy to be exploited by the kind of sea captains. And there was also the problem of kind of unemployment, which was a particular kind of issue in 1825. All of these things came together to mean that this struggle was a struggle for life and death. This day, 200... So that's easy. So we're wearing this.
Well, it's very important to understand and remember the events of 200 years ago and the actions of the employer, the loss of life and the brutality about the way the employers went about what they were doing for the basic right to fight for better wages, for better health and safety. So it's fundamental that we were here today. I think it's an absolute tragedy that this story's only just unravelling all these years later. Locals don't know about it, the seafaring population don't know about it, the trade union movement are only just coming to understand it now. But it's very important to understand that the importance of Sunderland as a city in relation to seafarers and the seafarers community, that we pay tribute and we remember these individuals who lost their life the way that they did going forward, who was to blame. And for too many years, seafarers have been away from the spotlight because they're away at sea. It's an industrial cancer. You know, we're still seeing that today. The actions of modern day employers, where we're P&O ferries, for example, the lack of, decent wages being paid, although they're not being treated with the same kind of brutality. Them actions towards seafarers and the lack of respect still exists today in the seafaring community. We are going to ensure that not only RMT members know about this, but the trade union movement and the seafarer population generally, because I think it's a very important, and one of the statements that we always say in our union, which is historical, is the past we inherit, the future we build.
It's difficult to know exactly how many people lost their lives or suffered serious injuries on that fateful day of August the 3rd, 1825. Using the information that we have available, including press reports, results of inquests, and parish burial records, we have identified 7 probable fatalities. Thomas Aird, aged 43, a sailor who died of a gunshot wound to the back of the head. He died within an hour of the injury. He left a widow and 1 child. His death was the focus of the first inquest, which delivered a verdict of justifiable homicide. It was reported that he was buried at Holy Trinity Church on August the 6th, but no burial records have been found for him. Richard Wallace, aged 45, lived at North Shore. He was a sea captain. He was shot in the breast and died instantly. He left a widow, herself in a dying state, and 2 children. The inquest verdict was justifiable homicide. He was buried at Holy Trinity Church on August the 6th. John Dover, aged 27, from Fitters Row. He's reported to have left a widow and 3 children, although another report suggests he was unmarried and the sole support for his widowed mother, Betty Dover. The inquest verdict was justifiable homicide. He was buried at Holy Trinity Church on August the 6th. Ralph Hunter Creighton, aged 22, a single man from Monk Wearmouth. He was shot dead whilst working as a carpenter at a nearby shipyard, just behind where you're standing today, probably owned by William Pyle. There was a separate second inquest for him that returned a verdict of accidental death. He was buried on the 6th of August in St. Peter's Church. James Quigley, aged 31, a labourer from Monk Wearmouth, who was killed by a stray bullet while walking home from work. He left a widow and 3 children, one of whom, Margaret, was less than 2 months old. He was buried at Holy Trinity Church on the 8th of August. Thomas Wilkinson, aged 25, from George Street. There was no inquest into his death. He was buried at Holy Trinity on August the 6th. Mary Wilson, aged 76, from Union Lane. She was buried at Holy Trinity on the 7th of August, and the words "killed August the 3rd" were written on her burial record and then, for some reason, crossed out. There was no inquest into her death. As far as we know, this is the first time that these names have been read out in public.
The ship owners of Sunderland are heavily involved in the coal trade. Over the second half of the 18th century, the number of coal ships registered in Sunderland grows 115%. By the time of the Napoleonic Wars, they're sufficiently wealthy enough to subscribe £8,000 to build the Exchange building behind me. We know that some of the ship owners were directly involved in the North Sands Massacre. So John Hutchison is a ship's captain actually, and he's aboard some of these vessels that are stopped in the port by the striking sailors. And it's him that reports this to John Davison, a ship builder and also a ship owner who happens to be the town magistrate as well. And it's Davison who boards the steam packet with the soldiers and who gives the orders to the lieutenant to open fire. So you can see the ship owners are kind of marking their own homework here insofar as they are deciding about whether this strike activity is legal, whether it ought to be repressed, but they're also making money from the coal trade themselves, so they're interested parties.
We hope this will be the first of a number of events. We kind of are laying down a foundation for the commemorations for 2025. At the moment, this has been kind of rushed through with about 3 months organisation. Towards the start of this year, possibly 1 or 2 people knew about this actual kind of event. As you can see when you look at the kind of people around us, there's maybe kind of 60, 70, 80 people here. It's also getting a lot of exposure in the national and local press. Now we could probably say that maybe thousands of people know about this. And once you have that kind of big mass of people, what that means is that you can get people together to collectively organise and to do things. And we very much hope that Sunderland Heritage Partnership will actually be taking this forward over the coming commemorative year with other events. But for now, we are marking the event here today, and we are respecting the honour and the wishes of those people at the time who described this as the ever to be remembered 3rd of August.
Hurrah, my lads, for Foulpunten! Unite, unite, North countrymen! Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah again! Hurrah, my lads, for Foulpunten! Hurrah, my lads, for Foulpunten! Unite, unite, North countrymen! And shipping officers crush them all, that first made sailors' wages fall.